Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's something I want to tell you. So it was in 2007, 16 years ago now. I think was about 2007. I was reading this article in Business Week, and at the time there's no private label. It's mostly online arbitrage, people reselling well-known brands, and a lot of third-party sellers, of course, doing arbitrage, and they were doing their own fulfillment. There was FBA, but it was not really, it was very new. So this article was about raising the standards of small sellers. And it was saying that Amazon, there was, yeah, I take it back, there was no FBA at the time. And Amazon was doing 1 day, 2 day shipping. So this article was advocating for raising the standards of how quickly these third-party sellers could ship products sold on Amazon. And it was all about, building infrastructure, blah, blah. And we are going to encourage the third-party sellers to also meet the same standard. And I laughed. Good luck, I thought. Keep dreaming. Small sellers will do everything to save a penny. And they're not going to be customer-centric with billions of dollars in the bank that you get from other people's pockets, right? By going public. So I laughed. But then they released the FBA service where they said to the sellers, we'll do the fulfillment, we'll offer the same standard, and you just need to worry about selling more. So what I'm getting at is we didn't know this was going on under the surface, and Amazon was planning that. And I think that I've had a couple of former Amazonians on the podcast, and they said something to me about small sellers, that what's happening out there is, just as you said, because it's hard to do this, it's becoming only a few sellers doing extremely well, and then the others are disappearing. So, and the ones disappearing don't have access to technology, resources, or whatever. So Amazon is now bringing out more and more and more tools to support those small sellers. So there is this movement by Amazon to make more things available to small sellers so that they can be more successful. Because otherwise, centralized power, centralized revenue stream, it never works in the long run. That's why this company is so strong, right?
And that's why I'm sure other guests of yours have said this, but the search query performance dashboard is really a pretty incredible thing that Amazon has released, as is the broader product opportunity explorer, right? If you think about before Amazon released these tools, there were companies like Helium 10 and Jungle Scout and others that were kind of trying to scrape this data for the long tail of the market. But the reality is all of the really large sellers, whether they were large corporate entities or sophisticated multiple time entrepreneurs or what have you, they all had their own kind of very expensive market research systems for trying to understand trends. Amazon, to their credit, has democratized that, right? Amazon has opened up its search data to the broader seller ecosystem, and you can access that in Seller Central, whether you sell $1 or whether you sell $100 million on Amazon. I think other parts of the brand analytics report, like some of the customer demographic information, are equally as interesting. But I do give Amazon a ton of credit for opening up really the top search trends and search query performance information, because that is something that I think before was an arbitrage for much more advanced people that could pay to either access scrape third-party data or had access to large market research trends, that has now been available to the longer tail. And you know this better than I do, like Amazon has to do these things, right? The entire Amazon story falls apart if you can't launch and scale a business on Amazon. And the PPC costs, being what they are is one threat. But at least democratizing access to the data is a huge step in the right direction, for folks being able to continue sort of, launching on Amazon. And I think it's even bigger than that, right? Like if I were, sort of starting an e-commerce brand today, and I've some of our brandable clients are very much built in this vein. Like the number one data source I would be looking at is Amazon top trend and search query performance data, right? Because you basically have a real time look into the consumer zeitgeist, right? You can see what hundreds of millions of people are looking for, and you can spot early trends. And who knows, maybe the right place to build that business isn't even on Amazon if the PPC is too expensive. But even if I was going to build a direct consumer business, the Amazon search data would be the first place I would look, because it's your best kind of view into what the customer actually wants. So yeah, I think it's a great point. And again, I think Amazon deserves credit, right? There's a lot of, valid criticism in the seller ecosystem about, Chinese sellers are overrunning the platform and Amazon does nothing. Very large accounts get preferential treatment, and all of these things may be true to a degree. But at the same time, Amazon is also launching some pretty outstanding tools that even the playing field.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, don't forget the product opportunity explorer, right?
Right.
That is it, on one side you can see exactly what is bringing your product business, and on the other side you can just pretty much look at anything and everything. Where is the business? And if you want to start something, what customers are searching and how much volume exists, and before you do anything. So releasing all that data, that was a big game changer, because before there was very little data being released.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity for software companies too, right? Like we may or may not, wink wink, be heading in this direction for brandable, but Amazon has released a ton of this data, but it's not necessarily in the most intuitive user format.
No.
And it lives in these kind of very obscure silos in the brand analytics reports. Obviously, a lot of the legacy software companies have their sort of versions of pivots on Product Opportunity Explorer and such. But I actually think this is going to be a really interesting area for some of the software companies in the ecosystem. Like if you can start to marry some of the top search trend and search query performance data with some of the kind of prevailing data around CPCs, with a really thorough analysis of category or product level unit economics. You can see where I'm going with this. Like you can almost start to almost build a funnel for operators to understand if launching in a given category will be profitable. Like I said, it's something we may or may not be working on as we kind of think about the next version of our software. But I think, there will certainly be some really interesting technology built on top of some of the new tools that Amazon has opened up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's an interesting discussion. There's definitely, I mean, as we record this, we're coming to the end of 2023, December.
Yep.
And God knows what's around the corner in 2024. Unless there's another pandemic going on. I read something today that the CDC is warning again against, but who's taking CDC seriously these days?
Well, if you have a kid, I mean, if you have a kid in daycare right now, every single parent I know is sick. Especially here in New York, it's like the plague going around with 1 to 3 year olds, which isn't that different than any winter with toddlers. But if my kid's daycare is any indication, there may be another black swan event around the corner. But God willing, that doesn't happen.